Welcome back to Speaking Llama. We are here with the latest person voted out of Australian Survivor, Heroes versus Villains, the great Hayley Leake. Hayley, how are you doing this morning after your brutal blindside last night?
Oh, I'm great. I am really good.
Yeah.
It's hard to watch it back. It's kind of cathartic, but then it's also like, how? Like, how didn't I see that coming? But that's the hindsight you have from the telly. But it's still great. Like, I'm really happy. We're happy with my outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you broke the winner's curse of Australian Survivor, made it farther than anyone else, made it farther than honestly I thought you might have made it, just given your how great you played Reigns versus Braun. If I'm being honest, going into this season, you were one of my all-time favorite Survivor players. And
Oh,
then watching you play this season, it was just that much more. I've loved watching your game in many ways because I think I would, if I were ever on Survivor, would play a similar type of game. But can you walk us through your strategy, kind of in particular? Right? I think we got to see it on the show, but your pre or post merge strategy in particular.
mm, yeah, that's really lovely. Thank you for saying that as well, because I definitely felt the pressure of that, of having played so recently and wanting to live up to that for myself, but for other people as well.
Yeah.
Um, I think that also feeds into my post-merge game because I was really struggling to see a path to the end for me.
Hmm.
And the one path that I could see was with George. And I knew that he would be willing to make that happen. And so the question I had to ask myself was I okay with that? Because
Mm,
I could see that as being really good for George for many different reasons, but his game is amazing. And
yeah.
I look, it would be a risk. I could have taken the chance of sitting next to him and seeing what the jury thought. Were they happy with how he was playing, not just strategically, because clearly that's amazing, but the rest of it. But I wasn't willing to roll the dice on that because I think he was playing great and he had my vote. So um,
Yeah.
I just knew that if I wanted to get to the end and give myself a shot of winning, he couldn't be there.
Yeah.
um, and I was hoping there'd be lots of chances to take George out. You would assume there would be, but he had like brainwashed his fellow players, and they not only were they thinking that they would go to with George to the end. Like George had convinced them that they were the biggest threats in the game. Like I'd have these chats with Jerry, and Jerry's like, "Honey, I'm the biggest threat out here." So, and I'm like, "Dude." So like props to George for doing that, but that just meant that like he
Yeah.
had an army, and it was really hard to break it. So I kind of just took any chance I had to kind of break that, and ideally do it in the shadows because like I'm also someone who wins endurance challenges. So
Yeah.
if I had a resume and I had that on as well, like who the heck's going to let me get very far?
Right. Absolutely. Well, I think one of the best chances you had of getting George out was that double idle play tribal council. You talked about laying a trail of breadcrumbs. Did you ever think about throwing a full loaf of bread instead, right? Just telling them this is what you need to do, more specifically?
Yeah, a lot of these things that I did were pretty last minute. Like,
Yeah.
it was like, okay, 2 minutes until we're going. Um, how about we try this? And so I didn't have the time to sit down and like um fully like chat to Sam and chat to Sean and chat to everyone. And I also don't know if I would have because um like you see how switched on George is. So like if he sees me having these chats with everyone, he's getting nervous. So
Yeah.
like it's this balance between I'm trying to have conversations, but I also don't want to be outed and having these conversations. I didn't know at this time that Simon was already trying to do the same thing. Like clearly the best thing to do would have been me and Simon talk to each other, but that wasn't happening. Um, but yeah, no, and I did have the option as well of like, do I stand up right now and like say Sam play for yourself? Um,
Hmm.
but I didn't want to like out myself as playing big. I think that that would have been really dangerous at that point. And like, I just wanted to have fun. Like I've already won. Like I'm having
Yeah.
fun. Like here's a move. Do you want to take it? No, you don't want to take it? All right, then fine. Like I'll stay in the majority. Like I don't
Right.
really care. Like I'm still in a majority.
I love it. I love it. And Haley, one of my favorite moves that you had this season was just a few episodes ago, flipping the vote from Simon to Sean. Uh, Yeah, we love Simon on this podcast. We love that you said this past episode of like, hey, don't pull a Simon to Simon. Incredible. He's a friend of the podcast, so we love it. My question for you is, what was your plan coming back to camp? Like, what was going to be your story? It worked out great that George immediately thought it was Nina, but did you have a plan going back to camp?
Like I again decided that very last minute when we're at tribal. I was just like, I think that I don't want Sean gone because I think I do want Sean gone.
Yeah.
Because Sean had these conversations with George that made him feel very confident, and I was just thinking, why would Sean feel so confident? And then I'm like, all right, the only way George gets to the end is if someone takes him or he wins that final immunity challenge. And I'm thinking, I bet you George would go to the end with Sean because he thinks he could beat him. He thinks Sean won't win any of these challenges. So then that made me super nervous about like when I was sitting, and if Sean had moved up on the ladder from me. So I'm happy for him to go. But when I was thinking, hey, how am I going to work this through? What am I going to do when I get back to camp? My plan was I'll just tell George what I did. I'll just say, hey, George, I flipped that vote. And the reason I did it is because I really feel like Sean was a big threat. I could see him getting close to you, and I didn't want that. I think George would have understood that. I've spoken to him since, and he says he would have been fine with that. But because he reacted so like viscerally and strongly against Nina immediately, like he was like, I don't know what the metaphor is, like a train, like something like really intense. I'm like, I'm not gonna step in front of that and then like get hit. Like if this is how George feels, let's let that happen. So I don't regret that I let that happen. My biggest error is that that night, once I get back and all this heat is going on Nina, what I need to do is pull Nina aside and be like, I'm so sorry that you're getting this heat. This is so unfair. I'm so like, but I will not leave you out here by yourself. Like, let's let them think it's you, but I'm working with you. We're going to take out George. I'll get the information. Let's do it. And like, just really, really, really nail that conversation down. But did I do that? No, I went to bed and she's seething. She's mad. George is like not sleeping. He doesn't know what's happened. It's the first time he doesn't know what's happened all game. And clearly they come together and like come against me. So great move by them. Of course, that's what they should do. Just lazy Hayley. Like I think I just didn't have like the same motivation this time. I only played like a year ago, and like I just feel like like all those times where you got to work hard, I was just tired. So that's my mistake.
Right, absolutely. Well, hindsight's also 2020, right? So, you mentioned that you recently played less than a year ago. We saw your season, and what was there any difference? Well, I'm sure there was a difference. What was the difference to you coming back on as a returner and as the only former winner?
It was so different. So when I played the first time, I think I was like 31. So I'd had 31 years of my life to understand how people perceive me. Like when I move through crowds in the world, like what do people think of me? Like I get that. So I could use that to make bonds and relationships and move forward. When I came in this time, I've been Hayley the winner for a year. I don't know who she is. Like I don't identify really as like Hayley the winner of Survivor. I'm Hayley. So I really was a bit confused about how people saw me and how they were gonna, like I didn't have a big framework for that. So I think that was really challenging. So I wasn't confident. Like when I'd go to have a conversation, but I wouldn't want to say too much. And then I'd try to have a conversation with someone else, but I'd not, because I didn't want to give the wrong impression because everyone's so scared of me and my name had come up for all the tribals. So yeah, I think that it made me really reserved and unsure of who my identity was. So that I found that really challenging. And I think ultimately meant that I didn't really find my feet in the end.
Yeah. Well, speaking of identity, I've got a two-part question for you. One, being a heroes versus villains season, do you feel like you were put on the right tribe? And then two, how did being a hero like on that tribe shape your game and gameplay, if at all?
I'm a villain.
Yes.
I'm definitely a villain, but I think that it was good that me and George were on different tribes. I think both of us wouldn't have got as far as we did if we were on the same tribe. Or maybe we would, who knows? But it was good. I think I liked that we were separate and we could kind of have our own path first. But the villains have so much more fun than the heroes.
Yeah.
And like our tribe was stacked. Like we had all this strength and we weren't losing any challenges. So what that meant is that you didn't really like understand where the alliances were, and all the muscle just became like, you know, the meat tray. Like it was just like the alliance, and you were either like pledging your allegiance to it or you were on the bottom. And like I couldn't be on the bottom. So if I was on the bottom, I'm out. Like you're not waiting to vote me out. So yeah, I just had to pledge my allegiance, and it was so boring. And like the villains were having so much fun. Yeah, the minute I got to merge, I had so much more fun. Like George is fun to work, not against, but like with. George is really fun to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there anyone on that first heroes tribe? So let's say, obviously the rogue vote out happened. Had y'all gone back to tribal earlier, who would you have worked with? Who would have been the target, do you think?
If we went to tribal before rogue got voted out?
Either, right? Or rogue obviously became an easy vote. Let's just say there wasn't an easy vote before that or after that.
I feel like I would have been in a lot of trouble. Like my name was really, really like being shopped around a lot at the start. I think that I would have had Flick and Sean would have tried to get me to stay in the game. They really wanted me to stay as Shields and Flick as my friend, and so I think that would have been okay. Yeah, like maybe Jerry, like he did have an injury at the start. Maybe he could have been the vote. Yeah, it was pretty tricky. Yeah. I really, really wanted to work with Ben. Like I was really hopeful that like how I envisaged it would be like me and Ben could work together, and that we could have Nina, and like she would have, like we both have information from the top, but we could kind of create misfit. I like working with misfits, like not the cool crowd, and like the misfit line at the bottom would have been really fun. But Nina had an incredible relationship with David. They were like best friends. So like because of that, she'd never move away from it, and rightly so. It was a better move for her to stay with him, but it just meant that we couldn't amass like the minority very easily.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, one of my last questions for you, Hayley, I feel like a big debate in the Survivor community is, should you throw a challenge or should you not throw a challenge? So
is that a debate? Why is that a debate?
Yeah, absolutely. So sell me on, I agree. I think throwing a challenge can be a good thing. Sell me on like, when should you throw a challenge, and what's the strategy behind doing that? How do you do it successfully?
You can never say like hard rules in Survivor about anything. Like if you like don't willy-nilly throw challenges all the time, because like chances are you'll get in trouble from that. But like sometimes it's advantageous. Okay, so the biggest time you should be thinking very hard about throwing challenges is at the swap. So when between swap and merge, all you're thinking is, how do I have numbers at merge? Because if you don't have numbers at merge, you're poop. So like you need them, and if you have, like this is the most obvious time you should always throw a challenge. You might have numbers on your swap tribe, but the other tribe where your friends are at, your allies, they're in a minority. Throw the challenge on your side and keep voting out like the people, like the other people who'll be against you at merge, and then keep your friends safe on the other side. Like you should definitely do that.
I agree. And especially saw this season, both swap tribes seem to be throwing challenges to do that. So it was fun.
Yeah, good. Like, that's so hard. The hardest part of the game is between swap and merge. I think it's all hard, to be honest, but that's really complicated, because you're trying to figure out, are my initial bonds better than the ones I might be making at swap? And I think we could probably look historically and try to figure that out, but from what I've experienced, your initial bonds are the strongest ones. So like do what you can to keep them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe that will be our summer project, a little research going on. Our last question for you, Hayley. We always ask this of everyone that we have on. We don't see everything that happens out there on the island. Was there anything that we weren't shown that was particularly special for you, or fun, exciting, that we didn't get to see on our TVs at home?
I reckon my favorite day out there was, I can't actually remember how much of this got shown, but it was a reward where we're on the swap tribe, we're in Villains 2.0, and we won the breakfast. And the breakfast, we got like basically unlimited coffee, and it was like, oh my god, you hadn't had coffee for by this point, and we just made like, I don't even know, we would have had like 10 shots each of coffee. We didn't sleep at all that night. We stayed up in camp, and like Nina was rapping, we're all singing, and it was like a jukebox. It was so much fun. Like easily the best day out there was this like coffee reward that never ended.
Well, some of your fellow tribe mates share that with you, because when we've asked them, you are the third person to tell us that. So
It was so fun. It was so much fun.
that's great. Well, Hayley, I loved watching you back out there. Hate to see you go. I hate to see you go. But we wish the best of luck for you. Thanks so much coming on. And who knows, maybe we'll see you back out there one day in the future.
Maybe. But enjoy the rest of the season. It is like, I'm so proud to be a part of this season because it is awesome and there's still more awesome to come.
Yeah.